That cold Monday morning, nobody imagined that a simple act of humiliation would change the life of an entire school. Students were laughing loudly in the main hallway. Some were pointing. Others were recording with their phones. In the middle of them stood an elderly man, wearing a blue janitor's uniform, holding an old cleaning cart. His name was Samuel. He was on his knees on the floor, trying to clean up the juice that a student had spilled on purpose. "Hurry up, old man," said one of the boys, kicking the bucket. The hallway exploded in laughter. Samuel didn't respond. He just lowered his head and continued cleaning. But what no one in that school knew was that this silent man carried a secret that would change everything. Because on that very day, everyone would discover something impossible to believe. The man they were humiliating was the true owner of the school. And when the truth came to light, silence took over every room, every hallway, every heart. Before continuing this moving story, please leave a like, subscribe to the Moments That Matter channel, and stay with me until the end. Because this story isn't just about injustice. It's about respect, dignity, and the power of never giving up on who you are. And the revelation at the end will deeply touch your heart. Now take a deep breath, and let's go back to that morning that no one would ever forget. Every day, Samuel arrived at school before the sun rose. While the city was still sleeping, he was already opening the gates, pushing his cleaning cart through the silent hallways. He cleaned the classrooms. He arranged the chairs. He picked up papers forgotten on the floor. Few students knew his name. To most, he was just the janitor. Some teachers were kind. Others simply passed by him as if he were part of the wall. But Samuel never complained. He always responded with a calm smile and a simple, "Good morning." What no one noticed was that Samuel observed everything closely. The students running through the halls. The teachers preparing lessons. The dreams being built inside those rooms. Sometimes he would stop for a moment, looking at the courtyard full of students, and a slight smile would appear on his face, as if that place meant much more to him than anyone could imagine. Because, to Samuel, that school wasn't just a job. It was a promise he had made many years ago. A promise he hadn't told anyone yet. On that Monday, the hallway was crowded. It was recess. Students were talking, laughing, and running back and forth. Samuel was passing by with his cleaning cart when he heard a noise behind him. Splash! A whole cup of juice hit the floor. But it wasn't an accident. A group of teenagers looked at him, holding back their laughter. "Oops. I guess someone is going to have to clean that up." The laughter began. Samuel stopped. He looked at the floor. Then he calmly took the cloth and knelt down to clean. But that wasn't enough for them. One of the boys kicked the bucket of water. Another started filming. Look at the old man working. The entire hallway watched. Some laughed. Others just observed in silence. Samuel kept cleaning. Without responding. Without arguing. Without looking up. But there was something in his eyes at that moment. It wasn't anger. It wasn't sadness. It was simply patience. As if he knew that day still had much more to reveal. At the same moment, everything was happening in the hallway. Something curious was happening in the principal's office. The school's new principal, Mrs. Carter, had started the job just a week prior. She was reviewing old school documents, reports, contracts, files forgotten in cardboard boxes, until she found a very old folder. The cover was yellowed by time, and the title caught her attention, Foundation of Riverside School. Curious, she opened the file. Inside were old photographs, men building the structure, students smiling in front of the first classrooms. But there was one photo in particular that made the principal stop. It was the image of a young man, holding a construction helmet. Behind him was the school building still under construction, and the name written below the photo was Samuel Whitaker, founder. The principal frowned. Samuel Whitaker. She was sure she had heard that name before, but where? Then, at that exact moment, she heard noise in the hallway, shouts, laughter, and someone saying, "The janitor is still cleaning." The principal stood up from her chair and walked quickly to the door, unaware that she was about to discover a truth that would change everything. When Principal Carter opened her office door, the noise from the hallway got even louder. Laughter, phones recording, some students pushing each other to see better. She walked fast, and then she saw the scene. Samuel was on his knees on the floor, cleaning the spilled juice while some students laughed and filmed. The bucket was overturned beside him. The principal stopped. Her gaze went straight to Samuel's face, and in that instant, something inside her connected. She remembered the photograph. The same gaze, the same face, only marked by time. Her heart began to beat faster. She walked into the middle of the hallway. What is going on here? The laughter stopped immediately. Phones started to lower. One of the students replied with contempt, "Nothing, Principal. The janitor is just doing his job." Samuel continued cleaning, in silence. The principal looked at him again, and then asked, in a calm voice, "Sir, what is your name?" Samuel slowly looked up, and replied calmly, "Samuel." The silence that took over the hallway was immediate. The principal felt a shiver run down her spine, because now she was certain that man was not just a janitor, and everything was about to change. Principal Carter helped Samuel up. The students watched, confused. She picked up the fallen bucket and set it aside. Then she looked at the group of students. "All of you, to the classroom now." Without arguing, they began to disperse. But some still looked back, trying to understand what was happening. When the hallway was finally empty, the principal turned to Samuel. Her eyes were full of questions. "Sir, how long have you worked here?" Samuel thought for a moment. Then he replied with a slight smile. "Work? I think since the first day." The principal took a deep breath. "Is your name Samuel Whitaker?" He nodded slowly. The principal was silent for a few seconds. Then she said something that no one in that school would imagine hearing. "You are the founder of this school." Samuel didn't seem surprised. He just looked around the hallway, the walls, the rooms, the lockers. "Yes," he said calmly. "But that was a long time ago." The principal couldn't believe it. While everyone saw only a janitor, they were walking every day beside the man who had built that place. Samuel walked slowly down the hallway, with the principal accompanying him. His steps were calm, as if every part of that building held a memory. "Many years ago," Samuel began, "this place was just an empty lot." He stopped near a window overlooking the school courtyard. Outside, students were playing ball, talking, and laughing. Samuel watched the scene for a few seconds. "I grew up in a town where many children didn't have the opportunity to study," he said. His voice was calm, but full of emotion. "So I promised myself that one day I would build a school, a place where any child could learn." The principal listened in silence. "But when the school was finally built," Samuel continued, "years passed, new principals arrived, new administrators took over." He smiled slightly, and little by little, my name was forgotten. The principal felt a pang in her heart. "Then why did you stay here?" Samuel looked back at the courtyard. The students were laughing, running, dreaming. "Because my dream was never to have my name on a plaque," he said. "My dream was to see these children having a future." That afternoon, something began to change inside the school. Principal Carter called an urgent meeting with the teachers and staff. Some arrived curious, others confused. Samuel was sitting discreetly in a chair at the back of the room, still wearing his janitor's uniform. When everyone was settled, the principal took a deep breath. "Today I discovered something that all of you need to know." The room fell silent. She looked directly at Samuel, the man you know as the school janitor. Some teachers exchanged glances. Is, in fact, the man who built this school. For a second, no one said anything. Then the murmurs began. What do you mean? Is that true? Samuel. The principal took the old file and placed it on the table. Old photographs, documents, signatures, proof of a story that had been forgotten. Everyone looked at Samuel again. But this time, they no longer saw just a man with a cleaning cart. They were looking at the man who had given life to that place. And in that moment, many began to realize something they should have understood long ago. The value of a person is never in the clothes they wear, but in the heart they carry. The news spread through the school faster than any rumor. In a few hours, practically everyone knew. The man who cleaned the hallways, the man who picked up papers from the floor, the man who arrived before the sun rose, was the founder of the school. When the students began to hear the full story, something changed in the atmosphere. The laughter that once echoed through the halls had now disappeared. In its place was silence, especially among the group of teenagers who had humiliated Samuel that morning. They watched the video they had recorded earlier. But now, looking at that scene, no one was laughing. One of the boys slowly turned off his phone. We didn't know. Another replied, in a low voice, but that doesn't change what we did. At the back of the courtyard, Samuel continued his work as always. He was sweeping leaves near the trees, as if nothing had happened. But this time, some students began to approach slowly, without laughing, without recording, just observing. Because now they understood something they couldn't see before. Sometimes, the most important people in our lives are the ones the world insists on ignoring. And when that truth finally appears, it weighs heavily on the conscience. That afternoon, something unexpected happened. The same students who had laughed at Samuel in the morning walked up to him in the school courtyard. Their steps were slow. None of them knew exactly what to say. Samuel was collecting some leaves when he noticed their presence. He looked up. The boys were standing in front of him, silent. The leader of the group took a deep breath. Mr. Samuel. He swallowed hard. We want to apologize. The others lowered their heads. What we did was wrong. For a moment, Samuel just looked at them. Without anger, without judgment. Only with the same calmness he always carried. Then he leaned his broom against the ground and said something none of them expected to hear. We all make mistakes. The students looked up, surprised. Samuel continued, the important thing isn't to never make a mistake. The important thing is to learn from it. He pointed to the school building. This school was built to teach math, history, and science. Then he looked directly at them. But the most important lessons in life are not in the books. In that moment, many of those young people learned something that no class could ever teach. The true meaning of respect. A few weeks later, the school held a special assembly. All the students were gathered in the gym. Teachers, staff, principals. Principal Carter took the stage. Beside her was Samuel. But this time, something was different. He was no longer wearing the janitor's uniform. He wore a simple suit. And his name was now written on a new plaque placed at the school entrance. Samuel Whitaker, founder. The principal took the microphone. For years, we walked through these hallways without knowing the story of the man who made all of this possible. The gym was in absolute silence. But today, we are going to correct that. Everyone began to applaud. Some students even stood up. Samuel seemed moved. But when he took the microphone, he said something simple. I never built this school to be remembered. He looked at all the students. I built this school so that you would have opportunities one never had. He paused. And if you want to honor this story, just do one thing. The gym went completely quiet. Samuel smiled. Treat everyone with respect. Stories like this remind us of something very important. Sometimes, the people who seem the simplest carry the most extraordinary stories. And often, we pass by them every day without noticing. Therefore, never judge someone by the clothes they wear, the job they do, or the way they look. Because behind every person, there is a story, a struggle, a dream, and perhaps, a legacy. If this story touched your heart, write here in the comments, respect always. And don't forget to subscribe to the Moments That Matter channel, because every week we bring stories that remind us of what truly matters in life. Until the next story. And never forget, the true greatness of a person is not in the position they hold, but in the heart they carry.